Dan Fogelberg died over 10 years ago, and truthfully, I can't remember any point during the past decade where I have heard one of his songs on the radio. Maybe I'm listening to the wrong stations, but truth be told, I listen to our local classic rock radio station as much as anything else. Sure, I can still get my Fogelberg fix, but to do so, I have to proactively search it out for myself. YouTube is great for that, and so are the other streaming services. But every once in a while, I would like the validation of having some of Fogelberg's best stuff pushed to me over the air. You know, I want to get it old school. For those who aren't familiar with Dan Fogelberg's breadth of work, it is substantial. Fogelberg recorded and performed from the late 60s until his passing in 2007. That said, the decade where Dan made his biggest mark were without doubt the late 70s and the early 80s. The 1974 Joe Walsh-produced album Souvenirs contained Fogelberg's first hit, Part of the Plan. His 1978 Twin Sons of Different Mothers was the first of two collaborations with jazz flautist Tim Weisberg, which found commercial success with songs such as The Power of Gold. Phoenix from 1979 reached the top 10 with Longer, and although Dan proved that he was commercially viable as an artist, it was his 1981 album, The Innocent Age, where he reached his critical and commercial peak. The double album included four of his biggest hits: Same Old Lang Syne, Hard to Say, Leader of the Band, and Run for the Roses. Same Old Lang Syne is probably my favorite Dan Fogelberg song, although there are lots of them. This one is so good because of its authenticity. It's autobiographical in nature and told in first person, and tells the story of two long ago romantic interests meeting just by chance in a grocery store on Christmas Eve. The song made it all the way to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was, for a time, played often during the holiday season alongside other traditional Christmas songs. There is just so much heart in that song. Why it isn't played more often, regardless of the time of year, is a crime. The same holds true for the other songs from that album, especially Leader of the Band. Earlier on in his career, Dan had been contacted by Don Henley about joining the Eagles. After much discussion, both of them decided that Dan wasn't the right guy for the job. Instead, that opportunity went to friend and fellow musician Joe Walsh. If you think about it, how many artists wouldn't have given anything to be part of the Eagles at that time? But Dan, true to his nature, had the ability to be reflective and contemplate on what would work best not only for himself, but the Eagles as well. Of course, the rest is history. Walsh was a huge contributor for the Eagles, and Fogelberg went on to find his greatest success professionally after making that decision. I mentioned Leader of the Band earlier. It's a special song. To quote Fogelberg himself, he said, "Leader of the Band was written for my father. He was a musician, educator, and band leader. I was so gratified that I was able to give him that song before he passed on. In his final years, he was interviewed many times by the press. Because of it, he went out in a blaze of glory, which meant a lot to me and my family." Dan Fogelberg understood that his talent allowed him to give musical gifts. His dad was the beneficiary of one of those gifts, but really, if you think about it, we all have been. Thank you, Dan Fogelberg. Thank you for sharing your gifts with all of us. To the radio stations out there, please share Dan's music once again. To aspiring artists, I would recommend listening to Dan Fogelberg as a musical template for what it means to be real and authentic. So that's it. What is your favorite Dan Fogelberg song? Was it one of the songs that I mentioned, or do you have a deeper cut that means more to you? Let me know in the comments section. As always, I would love a thumbs up and be honored if you consider subscribing to my channel. But most importantly, thank you so much for watching.